Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Books, Faith, Life, where we talk about books that transform and heal. I'm Pamela. I'm an author and former journalist. And the one thing that I enjoy more than writing is speaking to other writers. And today I'm delighted to welcome Tina Fornwald to our conversation. Dr. Tina is a grief advocate, author, speaker, and retired Army officer whose work is deeply rooted in both lived experience and a commitment to helping others navigate life after loss. After losing her husband of 29 years, she's created a framework, books, and resources that teach grief not as a thing we simply get over, but as something we learn to carry, integrate, and live alongside. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Tina.
Thank you for having me, Pamela.
Okay, I want to go back to 2017. Your husband, Mark, to whom you've been married 29 years, been together for 32 years. He died that year.
He
Walk
did.
us through your life, your marriage, and your heart in the weeks and months up to that, and in the weeks and month after that.
Thank you. The weeks before that, so Mark and I were in the process of relocating to Virginia. The children were getting older. We were preparing to be empty nesters, and we were like, rah, 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 we about to do this. We did it. They out. We good. And so we had told the church that we were at that we were leaving, and they gave us an amazing going away party. When I say amazing, like sometimes I would try to go into the sanctuary. It was like, Reverend Teen, you can't go in there. I was like, y'all being awfully pushy. I ain't gone yet. Little did I know, little did I know, the entire leadership had created a choir and they made up a song to sing to us. And I
Oh,
say this is important. When you dipping out of your church, you miss them an opportunity to honor you. And sometimes we dip, we did not dip. So they knew we were leaving. Our son was going into the military. Well, our son and daughter were both going into the military, and was the first to get a job in Virginia. So he had this amazing going away party where people are saying all these amazing things. And so now he has the job in Virginia. Our son is in the military. My daughter is getting ready to go into the military. And it was the week of March 11th. It was that Friday before, and I was supposed to go on a work trip. So this is 2017. We weren't having all this video conference and all this stuff. It was like either you're in person or you're not. And I went to work and I just had this strong sense from the Holy Spirit saying, you need to go see your husband. And I was like, I don't want to, I'm like, I'm gonna see him like Easter. Like we already had a plan, like how this was gonna happen. And I was like, I'm gonna see him in Easter. And then I heard it again. I was like, I don't need God to tell me twice. And this is with my head to go get a booty call from my husband because I ain't seen him in a minute. So I was like, Lord, if you want me to, okay, I will
okay,
do
I'll
what
do
you
it.
want.
I'll be obedient.
And I called, and so, but I still had this work trip. And I was on the phone relentless. This is the night before we were getting ready to go. So this guy was traveling with, I didn't have his phone number. I'm at work late trying to change all these things because when you hear God prompting you, I have learned sometimes you only get one chance to listen. I didn't know then, but that was my one chance for this circumstance to be able to respond. So I called Mark and go, "You want to get together?" "Oh yeah, okay. Where? What?" Well, like he not sitting here worrying about that. And so I canceled the trip. We do video conference, and I just heard at first cancel the trip. Then I heard God say, you need to spend time with your husband. And I had, ministerial duties, things you're going to do. And I was like, don't none of that even matter. I hear God saying, spend time with my husband. I call my pastor. I said, I can't do here. I won't be here. And so we meet in Delaware, which was about 3.5 hours from where Mark was living in Virginia, where I live now, and about 3.5 hours from where I was in Pennsylvania. Now, no marriage is perfect and everybody got their little pet peeves. I can't stand being lost. I can't not stand being lost. I cannot stand bad directions. So we're going to the movies, someplace we found, and we got lost and nobody had an argument. I was like, oh, we having a good time. Okay. Nobody's arguing about, little petty stuff you argue about. Asked him where he wanted to go eat. He said Chinese. And something I really like, we go to the movies, everything is fine. The next day, Mark wasn't feeling well. He had a heart attack and he died in our hotel room. I'm sitting on the bed. I hear this thud, and he is just out of it. And I'm calling now we're on base, Delaware Air Force Base. So I'm calling down to the front desk and I'm going, okay, if I start CPR, then I can't call because once you start, you can't stop. And I'm thinking of all these things like Tina, make the phone call. I do all that. The MPs, the medics are, and they're coming into the room and they're fully armed because that's what you're doing on a military base. I'm like, so now I'm in military officer mode, announcing who I am, da 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 da. I go to the end of the hall and I'm losing my mind. I am screaming into the phone. I am calling to my family and I'm telling my oldest sister, I love him. In my mind, which is totally irrational, this cloak of love should be protecting him. This is not how our story ends. And I remember them taking him to the hospital and the MP driving with me and being in the waiting room and the doctor saying, Miss Fornwald, and can you come in this room? And I'm going, that is not good when they ask you to come into the room by yourself. Like, we have seen that on Grey's Anatomy. Nobody wants that. And I'm sitting there and he's telling me, your husband's had a major heart attack. And I was like, define what major means. And I can't remember, but it was like 60 to 70% of his heart was blocked and done. And the doctor said, we need to see if we can make it through the evening. And I remember crying on the piece of paper that I had that I was texting and sending to friends. He did not make it through the night. I remember following the doctor to another waiting room or different area of the hospital and hearing people walk by and you hear small chatter and they were like, just carefree, let's have lunch. And I was like, when will I ever care what to have for lunch again? I don't know what that will look like. And I remember being in the final waiting room in the ICU, and they said that they would bring me back in a little bit. And then I kept hearing all these codes going off, and I was like, Tina, that's Mark. That is Mark coding. And he had to be resuscitated double digit amount of times. And the doctor came in, and I remember screaming. He was like, I'm not here for that. And we were talking about that I had a DNR. Didn't have it with me, but we had those types of things in place. And so this doctor that had started the evening with me being very professional and giving all of this medical advice, now the final time, hmm, he comes into this waiting room. I'm on the phone with our children. He got down on his knees and he put his hand on my knee and said, your husband has coded so many times. I know you mentioned you had a DNR. What do you want to do now? And I remember our children saying, Dad would not want to be alive like that. But you don't want to have to make that choice. And as I was preparing to make that decision, the nurse and somebody else came in and said that he was gone. And at that time, there were family and friends coming from Pennsylvania, from Virginia. In fact, my girlfriend that just left was literally one of those people on the road driving to where I was in Delaware and got that news and pulled over on the side of the road, trying to figure out how can she get herself together to get to me and be there. And I cannot say this enough. Have friends. Have friends, have community, have people that are genuinely in your life. Because when life does what life does, you don't want to be alone. And I am so grateful for my tribe, my siblings, my girlfriends that I have had for years, that my children have grown up calling them auntie. That first year, devastation in a way that I didn't know was possible. Did a lot of reading, reading a book called I can't even think of it now. Damn gonna where's that? Mary Frances O'Connor, The Grieving Brain and the Grieving Body. Dr. Pamela Blair, the book I Wasn't Ready to Say Goodbye, and just absorbing What does grief look like? Not Reverend Tina being there when someone else's loved one passed away. Not this army officer when consoling a family but my husband died. Understanding the neurological impact of grief on the body. People think it's just sadness. There's a whole thing going on. Understanding that the body is protecting you from profound trauma, how your prefrontal cortex is not operating correctly and your amygdala and you're in fight and flight mode. Understanding that I'm waking up every day and having post-it notes all around my house, thinking I am crazy because I can't remember the last two things I'm going to do. And I was this high functional project manager doing all these things and barely able to think. And then year two, and everybody's super excited. Oh, you got through year one. I'm like, what are we excited for? They are still there. What do we go here? And now the mental fog has lifted. And now the idea of thinking about what my life looks like as an individual and trying to embrace that.
You mentioned year two. I have heard from several people. Can you hear me? Hold on 1 second. It should be. Can you hear me now?
Just barely, but go ahead.
Okay, so I have heard from numerous people, several people, that year two, oh, they thought year one was bad, but year two is it's just different, and it's a gut punch. Can you explain that?
Yeah, you're awake. Year one, for me, and because everybody's different, I want to say from the initial being in that hallway screaming to around 8 or 9 months. I liken it to, like when you go on a plane and your ear starts popping and then you need the gum, you think like your ears are popping, you feel like, okay, I know this is going to be over. Once I land, it's going to be like that.
Hmm.
I didn't know the fog I was in until I started coming out of it.
Right.
I didn't know, like my daughter would get in the car, she's like, I don't know if you look like you could drive me someplace. Like, I don't know. Or me being at work or and people making comments and just slowly not able to comprehend. That is a natural part of grief.
Mm-hmm.
The person you love died. Your brain is like a computer. And my brain is searching to get Mark on the way home because I will call him and ask if there's something you want me to pick up from the grocery store. My brain is glitching. Your brain is trying to reprogram and rewrite what life looks like when you don't make that phone call coming home.
Right.
I drove into my driveway. I'm preparing to go into the house. He's not there. Your brain is trying to go, what do you do if that person's not there? And you're trying to rewire that. You're laying in bed that you've laid in this bed with this husband, and there's no toe to rub. There's no bad breath on the other side of the bed. There's no argument. There's no silence. There's no nothing. You are in this bed alone and you're looking at this other side going, they are never going to sleep there again.
Mhm.
You are caught making phone calls to say my spouse died. I need to close down this. I need to adjust this. I need to do that. Having to say I have their death certificate, it's on my phone still to this day because something
Wow.
came in the mail a year ago that I thought I had wrapped up all the business and I needed to go find his death certificate on my phone, his birth certificate, his DD 214. 9 years later, and I'm like, bruh. And so year two comes along, and everybody's been on the cheerleader marking first birthday, first this, da 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 da, and extremely grateful. Then
Mm-hmm.
year two comes, people have to go back to their lives. People have to continue living. And so now you go to Costco's for the first time, and you're crying by the grocery store trying to go in because was the person doing all the eating at all the free samples, and he's the person doing the shopping. I left the shopping cart there and left. I didn't have the capacity for that. And giving myself permission to say, this is uncharted territory, and when it don't work for me, I'm out.
Right, right. And so that moves into the next point I wanted to make. You have stated that the self-blame, the spiritual betrayal, the isolation, the numbing, those things
You
that
went
you
into the survival patterns. Okay.
they are actually survival patterns. They're not weakness. They're not weakness. We need to reframe that. Let's talk about that.
So okay. So a lot of people focus on the stages of grief. Let me tell you, well, let me invite you to research Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. What you will find, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her interns found those stages belonging to people who were at the end of their lives. Those were people who were at the doorstep of dying. And
Hmm.
those were behaviors that they found belonging to those people near death.
Right.
Now, those stages have been adopted to have a reference for people who are grieving. The
Hmm.
challenge with that is my grief don't fit in 5 blocks. And what happens when my grief is not fitting in one of these blocks? Lo and behold, now I feel like I'm not even grieving right because I'm not in one of these blocks. A person's dead. I'm emotional and I can't even grieve correctly. We got a problem, Houston.
Right.
What
And
I
especially if you're cycling through them.
right. So
Right.
I invite you to look up an emotional wheel and look at the core, the behavior, and what it exhibits. You will guarantee find how you feel in different places. You'll be able to see what your behavior is and be able to understand my behavior is coming. I'm acting this way because I feel this way and the core of that.
Hmm.
Now I talk to people and they say, I feel like I'm stuck. That is their self evaluation, that they feel like they are stuck in their grief. And so then I say, okay, you've come to me and you said that you were stuck. This is your self assessment. You can go to my website, tinafornwald.com, look up where grief gets stuck, and there's a self assessment you can take and a free download. What I have learned that the survival patterns, once carried too long, now get us in a place of being stuck. And what that can look like. Um, you mentioned isolation. So when someone we love dies, we often pull back from our regular activities of life. Maybe being around people is too overstimulating. I'm still trying to understand what my life looks like. I may feel weird, like I'm the third wheel or what's going on with everybody else. And so I've retracted from life, or I've gotten in my mind, nobody really cares or no one understands what's going on. And so people have called, I've turned them away. And now I've been under this idea time heals all wounds. It does not. Let me be very clear about that. If you're not doing anything in that process, you will most likely find yourself right where you're at. Another book that I read is the Grief Survival Handbook. And they do an amazing job of going through your grief timeline of when you started grieving. And some people, maybe it's a small pet or it's the first breakup or something else. And so we've learned that when we're grieving, mom used to go away to the side and she didn't let anybody see her like that. And so
Hmm.
now we've gotten this pattern where I isolate, but then you blink and it's 5 years later. Now,
And you've done no
isolation,
work. Right.
so being alone for a little bit is different than isolating yourself from society.
Hmm.
Everyone probably needs time to take away and reflect and, journal or go for a walk and just reassess where life is and what's going on. So
Hmm.
the self-isolation was a survival pattern in the beginning of the grief. Now, 5 years later, is it disconnected you from everyone? The
Right.
self-blame in the beginning, going back to one time to hear things. I know if I did not listen to God's prompting to
Oh
go
my
see
gosh. Oh,
that, so you already see. So if I didn't listen, Mark still would have died because we all have an appointed moment in time that we will leave this earth. He would have
Mm-hmm.
died probably in the apartment, one bedroom apartment we have for him here in Virginia. But the guilt and self blame, I would have been like, oh, Tina, if you were there, maybe you could have prevented this from happening, or you could have did. I would have plagued myself with those negative thoughts. And the reality is, I could not have stopped him from dying
Right.
at all. But that self blame would have been part of me trying to ruminate, trying to understand, trying to process. And now I would get into a place what started out as me trying to survive and understand. Now I think everything is wrong in the world is my fault because I didn't save him.
Right.
So now you
And
have
you
to
had no way, right. And you had no way of knowing that even if you had gone, still would have happened. You had
but
no
of
way of
course we
knowing
could have made it better. Of course I could have done, of course, if I was there, this could have changed. I could have done this, I could have done that. Now I've carried this into so many different things, the guilt, the overwhelming, the spiritual betrayal. Sometimes people may have had a relationship with God, whatever their faith is. Now their person dies and they feel like the God of the universe personally attacked them, came and took their person. What do I do if I feel like the God of the universe took my person from me? Who do
it.
I
Right.
find comfort in? Where do I go for support if now I have based my entire grief and this person dying on that? Now also emotional suppression. I am strong. No one is going to see me break down. I'm not going to do that. I got all my capes on. I am here for this. Baby, what I will tell you, grief will pack a suitcase and wait you out.
Ooh.
Or you have decided that I don't want to feel grief. So I'm going to sex it out. I'm going to drug it out. I'm going to
Hmm.
work late nights. I'm going to do all these things because I need to survive just this year. I need to get past this. And now you see you have self isolated, self blame, spiritual betrayal, emotional numbness, and suppression. You can see how, and when I talk to people, I go, have you experienced any, or they go, all five?
All of them.
Okay, now you can, but when you break it down like that, now you see why you feel stuck because
Hmm.
there's no motion going forward.
Right.
Because I can't talk to God because God's the reason this happened. I have blame. I can't journal because all my journaling comes back to me not being there and making this happen. I'm isolated because in my mind, this self-talk has become no one else understands how I feel. I've been working late nights because I'm trying to run from grief. You're not going to find me. I'm not going to let anybody see me down. So I'm suppressing my emotions.
Yeah,
And
I can
so,
see.
yeah.
Oh,
So now you go from what was survival to get through it to now in the timeline, it doesn't matter. Some people may feel stuck after a year, somebody may feel stuck 5 or 10 years later. But if you feel like you are still at the same place where they died, I invite you to look at this and say, does this resonate with me?
hmm.
Is this something I feel like I'm not living my life anymore? To consider if you feel like you may be stuck.
Right. Because you have said it's not that we want grief to disappear. We want it to move.
Yeah, and movement looks like, you know, my husband died, my children's father died. What movement looks like for me is I'm going to see my children on their birthday, no matter where they are in this world. I am not going to allow the absence of their dad to keep me isolated and away from my children and lose two parents. That happened in the first 6 to 9 months where I was so devastated. I remember looking back at our text thread between my children and I, and there was silence. I was
Mm.
trying to barely had enough energy to figure Tina out. I didn't have any energy to be their mom or to show up or to do those things. That was me isolating. That was me protecting myself and trying to process this. But the movement was okay, Christmas is coming. We're going to get together. My daughter's birthday is coming. I'm going to be where she is. My son's birthday. That was me choosing what moving forward looks like. Did I do it crying on that plane? You bet your dollar I did. Do you think I cried when I got that rental car and had to pull over on the side of the road? Yes. But I knew my children and I deserved each other. And I had to make that effort to move forward in life in this version that we have and continue living.
And I'm sure your decision, because that's what that was, to do that, impacted their grief journey
Yes.
in a positive way.
And I'm glad you used the word decision because I'm not a fan of when people say, well, you had to go visit your kids. I did not. We make a
Mhm.
choice every day. I made a choice to say yes to this conversation with you. You made a choice to reach out and ask me. Whether what's on the other side of that, that's a choice. But if we don't make the choice to do something, we will never have the result of something different than what we have now.
Exactly. We have agency. We can create our lives, not minimizing the pain, the great pain that people are going through. But yes, we have agency. Okay, so I want to change tactics a little bit. You are the author of a book, which is the reason I reached out to you. And you're tackling this subject of grief, but you're tackling it in fiction and not
Yes.
nonfiction. Tell us a little bit about the book, and then tell us why you chose fiction instead of nonfiction.
That's a good question. And when my siblings heard I was writing a book, they're like, oh, she's about to write her memoirs. We're going to have to read this and encourage her and do all these things. And I must say, for some people, and not that my memoirs may not come later, that's just not where this ended. But I'll say I did start writing my memoirs. I pulled out all my diaries. I have little video cassettes from Mark when I were in the military and sending videos. The amount of tears that were going on in this office, reliving my life, finding an old AT&T phone bill where the phone bill was like $600 because I was in Korea and he was in Honduras, and how I was going to put that in my memoirs. And I was thinking, girl, how this going to help somebody though? And I was like, you've been podcasting at this point. I've been podcasting, I want to say 3 or 4 years. I have shared my story with the people in my community through podcasting. I just didn't feel like that was the right place to start. And so then I
Mm,
started, I got that on my computer one day. We don't know where it's going to go. Then I started writing a book about how to support the bereaved. Seemed amazing. Had the chapters, all the stuff down. And then I went into the bookstore. Those books were in the back, in the dusty part of the bookstore where
right,
only
right.
people go because they have a paper to write or they're in seminary or something going on, but it is not the everyday. But baby, when you look at this cover,
Hmm.
what do you see when you see that cover?
I see elevation. I see shading. I see light and I see dark.
Fire, spice. Does this look like a story that would intrigue you?
Yes.
And so driving home from work, I think I was driving home, and I heard guys say the Five Widows Club. I was like, oh, that sounds spicy. Like that sounds like some Angela Bassett sort of kind of what we doing. And I
Hmm.
was like, and it just started flowing. These five women. Now, the beauty of podcasting at this point, 52 weeks, every week a year, and then hosting a TikTok live every Monday for people, widows and widowers coming in. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of character building, a lot of different parts of grief. And people learn from stories. We
Yes.
learn, and we learn without even being taught. And so in this book, these five women who are a combination of all the people and myself that I have met on this journey. So even though it may be fiction, the truth is strong.
Right.
To be able to read and see the different stories and what happened. And so, one, wanting to have a story that was compelling, wanting
Hmm.
to have a story that women and men would see themselves in and feel validated, heard, and seen. Power in that.
Wonderful. How long did it take you to write it?
2 years
Okay.
and 30 pounds. Let me just be clear. Away. And I just went as we're having this conversation, I had my right knee replaced on June 30th. And this 30 pounds is trying to I said, you can get ready to let go because as soon as I can get back in the gym, we is done
Mm.
with you.
So this book is part of a trilogy. You're talking
Yes.
about this is five women who are widows and their journey. So tell us about book two and the difference between the two.
And so, one thing I've learned, and thank you for that question, women get a lot of support. Widowers don't always get the support that they need. And in society, we don't even allow our men to grieve without um, putting words like weak or I can't believe he's crying or you need to, get strong. You're being a baby. Their spouses died. Their life is tremendously different and they are
Hmm.
devastated.
Hmm.
And so the second book is the Five Widowers Circle. Five men who are widowers and their journey. They have a common space that they connect in. The women met at a grief support group. Not the men don't, but that's not where they always see right there what that looks like. So these men, they have the same barber. And that becomes the connection of doing that. And I have the five profiles written out. And I'll just say this. Yes, one of them is a pastor. You know them ladies at the church cooking the pie, trying to be all up in his face and doing that. So we have all that going on.
Oh, yes, because that's how it is. But
Yes.
you've taken a unique approach in your research for this book. Um, you've got some men to help you out. Tell us about that.
That is true because and I did remarry and I was telling my current husband about the second book. He's like, can I look at that? Like, what you doing? Like, I don't need you writing a book about five men and it don't sound right. I was like, you're not wrong, but you sound a little aggressive about that. But I'll take you. Thank you for wanting to care. And I have six other men that are going to review the profiles of the five men in the barber because I want them to be real men. I want
Right.
them to be men that if when a man reads this book, he's going, yeah, that's like that's how I would have handled that. Like, that's how I would have did that. Or
Yeah,
they
you got
see
that right.
themselves, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, okay, she did that.
Okay. Okay, so that book will be out soon. And then book
2028.
2028, tell us about book three.
Book three is The Children We Left Behind. Book
Hmm.
three is scheduled to come out in 2030, God willing. And those young adults will be two young adults from the widows, two from the widowers, and another young adult that we've never met before.
Hmm. Okay. One thing, as you're telling your story, that I was really struck by, you said, make sure you have friends when life does what it does. You had a strong support system, um, and still have some of those friends. But did you hear or feel any of those negative things that widows or those grieving sometimes hear and feel? Like you should be over it by now, or God wanted them home and they're in a better place, those kinds of things.
When I tell you I'm from Chicago and I'm kind of a thug,
Okay.
let me be very clear. And so are my siblings. And they don't play about me. So I
Right.
will tell you, and I've heard those things,
Hmm.
silliness, things that
Right.
people say out of their mouth because they don't know any better. They haven't had that profound experience. And we
Hmm.
just repeat these cliches. The week that Mark died, there was a huge snowstorm in Pennsylvania. And I remember one of the clergy people telling me, well, you should be glad that he's in a better place. And I said, hey, do you like your wife? He's like, yeah, I love her. So imagine you made love to her real good the night before, and then she dropped dead the next day. And the way, and he, I said, and next time you decide to open your mouth and say something to me about like that, I want you to know I love my husband. We made love really good the next day, and he died. So don't be telling nobody that. And
Right.
he was like, that was a teachable moment because
Hmm.
his intentions were well, but he was repeating a cliche that he had heard was the right thing to say.
Hmm.
And so going back to where grief gets stuck, the five survival pattern has developed into workshops that I do at places of faith. That
Right.
a 3-day workshop I do Friday night with the pastor and his immediate clergy. And there are videos and different things that I show about people who are grieving because the church is heavy on knowing the scripture. But do you know how to show up in love? Do you know how to
Right.
deal with someone who is now mad at God and doesn't know what to do? So that ability to bring that full circle and make that a workable concept. And then day two is working with the people that are supporting the grief. They may have grief share or whatever grief support to do, but they don't know how to go past that. And
Right.
because I am an ordained minister, now giving me the opportunity to give a message to your congregation. So now we've started with the leadership to the full breadth. So now people don't have to be ashamed to show that
Mhm.
I'm grieving maybe 5 years later because I'm not a good Christian if I'm still sad because I we don't grieve as the world do, but we grieve.
But we grieve. Yeah. We don't grieve as the world do. That doesn't mean that we don't grieve.
Yes. So the second thing somebody told me, I remember being in Mark's repast. And this guy said, Reverend Tina, tell my wife that she, she need to treat me well because I could be dead one day. I said, do you have life
Ooh.
insurance? I said, because you go out to eat a lot. And he was like, I don't. I said, well, then she probably should be mad at you because you kind of older. So if you die and leave her kind of raggedy, what that gonna look like? And I was left with my chicken. He caught me too soon because I was like, but for real though, if you going out and you doing all this stuff, you not taking care, we are going to die. There's no way out of it. Unless the rapture happens, bank on it. What are the preparations for the people that you leave behind? So
Right.
I guess they like, ain't nobody messing with her. They all stopped talking. They was like, don't nobody want none of that with her.
What an audacious question. Tell my wife to behave. Because, okay. All righty.
In
Okay.
his repast. In his repast. Like his body may still be in the sanctuary. I'm not sure if they took it to the cremation, but I'm like,
It would have been a horrible question to ask weeks or months later, but that day.
I guess I seemed approachable.
Okay. I enjoy so much the connection of the faith and the intellect here. When you were grieving, you were studying, you were learning about grief. Um, you weren't praying it away. And not that I don't believe prayer is important, but you know what I'm saying. It was holistic and it was whole. Um, did it start out that way?
Absolutely, because I was like, when I heard, I knew Mark wanted to be cremated. I'm like, what the Bible say about that? Everybody usually like want to be like so they can their body can come back. And what does it say? Like the way I turned my daughter's bedroom into a full-on study. Like when she came home, she was like, I said, girl, you don't live here. This is my house. I needed the way when I was getting up in the middle of the night crying on my elliptical watching TV because when you're grieving, you don't often sleep. I'm in there with my prayer shawl or doing these different things. No part of me is trying to be delusional and like, God, make this go away. No, God, carry me through this horrible time. This
Hmm.
is the most miserable, gut wrenching, horrible experience that will not be changing because He is always dead. I was reaching out to every widow and widower I knew, trying to have lunch with them, sit down with them. Like, how you not crazy though? Like, how
Right.
you get up? Like, how you do this? And them being willing to have the conversation. It's interesting. This morning, a widow who is a year ahead of me, we lived and went to the same church, and she called me. She said, "Hey, Reverend Tina, I need you to." Get dressed. We're going to a spa and bring a swimsuit. I was like, is this a good look? Like, am I allowed to do this? But what she did, she took me what I feel like was behind the veil. She shared with me thoughts that I didn't even know how to be comfortable with because my husband had died. One of the thoughts that you may never hear somebody think out loud and they love their spouse. Let me be clear. There are some people whose spouses died, saved them from a divorce. Their spouses died and they are too afraid to say out loud that they were hitting them, beating them, cheating on them, and their death was grace.
Woo.
And I know everyone has a different story. I loved my husband and I'm grateful that we had that kind of marriage. The way when he died, I was thinking of everybody who had a bad spouse and they were still breathing, but I wasn't allowed to say that out loud. But that woman, Ingrid, gave me the space to say that without feeling bad. She dropped some nuggets on me and said, that's how people feel, but they may not be willing to say that. And that is why like the retreat that we have, when you are able to come together as a collective, not in a trauma bonding, but in a validating way to understand, yes, those are natural feelings. And where do we go from here for life continuing to move forward?
I want to talk about the resources that you offer because they are many and varied and they are wonderful. I want to start with, we've already talked about the books. Let's talk about your podcast. There's a retreat that you offer. There's some free resources on your website. Let's talk about those, please.
Thank you for bringing that up. Going back to the men, we have a gentleman, a grief coach named Mr. James Price, who is a widower. He hosts a men's only grief support group meeting the second Thursday of the month. And it is important because women, we can chatty up. And now, let me be clear, not every 100%, but statistically speaking, women have a quicker way of creating community and connecting and being honest with our feelings with our community. And men don't get that space. And I have found when I've had the men and women together, the women often out talk the men and they quietly go into the shadows.
Mhm.
So James Price being able to hold a space for men only to authentically talk about their grief, their spouses who have died or other people they are grieving is such a rich space that men need and be able to value them. And I am grateful for James being able to host that. And he has done a lot of work in his journey of his own grief and educating himself how to be there for the men. The other thing, and that is at no charge. That is a space that we offer to be available because people need to know they're not alone.
Right.
And people may be surprised to see, but every Monday, long things work out at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I hold a TikTok live conversation about grief, different topics. We're having this conversation on Tuesday. Last night we had a conversation about widows dating for lust, fun, or marriage. That was a conversation
Right.
because
Pick your lane.
like how you in here? And the conversation was juicy. And
I bet it
yeah,
was.
and so, but having a real place to talk about what dating looks like for you now, then different. One of the other programs that I'm extremely excited to share is Children of Widowhood Secret Santa. And what that is, it allows us to partner with whoever will come along and help us. If you have a civic club, a book club, your employer, because Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. And let me say this, it is a secular support. My faith in God is not part of that nonprofit. I
Right.
show up to help anybody, no matter the faith or non-faith. And I had a long conversation with my pastor when we were putting this together. There are too many people that when you say what your faith look like something different to them that's interpreted. There's too many people that be mad at God. I don't need that to be a barrier. I don't need a title to be a barrier. I need to be able to show up, authentically hold space and love you and let that be the basis for it. So I just want to be clear. Tina's personal story would not be here without God. This nonprofit giving me space to show up and be there for people. But the holidays are hard. And
Yes.
financial impact of a spouse passing, the majority of people are trying to figure out just how to eat, how to survive, how to do stuff. And so now your spouse has passed and you have these children. Sometimes we've had situations where both parents are deceased and there is a caretaker. And so June 1st through the 30th, people go to our website and register for Children Widowhood Secret Santa. So now the registration is closed. There are two widows that manage that group, amazing women, Tiffany and Lisa. They vet through the list, validate that one or both of the parents are deceased, and then they help those guardians or the remaining parent create an anonymous Amazon wish list. And that means you would only thing that is seen is their city and state. Tiffany, Lisa, and I know everybody's location, all that is. But when you go to our website on October 1st, it'll say family one through whatever. And let me be clear, year 2024, we had 7 families. 2025, we had 11. We received 42 applications for 2026.
Wow.
We need sponsors. Like if you're listening to this podcast, I so need you to sponsor either one child or one family. Each child gets to pick 5 gifts of $50 or less. Each child is under the age of 18. If they're over 18, they have a special need. So when you
Hmm.
go to our website on October 1st. Well, actually, if you go to our website now and say that you're interested in being a sponsor, we'll get some information and we'll follow up with you, let you know. We try to get families sponsored and taken care of. If you can do one gift for one child, maybe all the gifts for a child, whatever you can do. And if you're a person like me, cannot stand shopping, you can just donate and we'll use that money to purchase the gifts. And so
Right.
Children of Widowhood Secret Santa allows us to meet people at their place of need and keep
Okay.
their dignity by keeping their privacy. You'll see their city and state, and you get to, and I liken it to like back in the day when you could look through the J.C. Penney's or the Montgomery Ward's catalog.
Love that. I used
Right,
to
you'd be like,
love that.
I'm getting this and this and this. So to be able to see you're buying this for that child and it's going right to them, you can
Hmm.
keep that receipt, keep a copy of our webpage. You donated that and did that to the 501(c)(3). That, and I just want to say, I wanted to do something like that. I didn't have the bandwidth. And these two widows approached me and said, would your organization be? I was like, yes, before they could finish. We presented it to our board and it's been amazing. The other thing that we do, we have an annual butterfly release ceremony that is on September 12th. And I don't use this word lightly, but if you have never been to a butterfly release ceremony, I really invite you to come. Literally to open this envelope and watch this butterfly come out, hold it in your hand. The sense of just connection to nature and the continuation of life and honoring your loved one is amazing. It is life giving, it is encouraging, it is emotional, and it just allows you, that's another way of moving forward. In that
Mm.
same space where we have the butterfly release ceremony, we're in the process of developing a memorial garden, a little sanctuary in Norfolk. And also a part of the garden is going to be food producing. So the people in that community can come and pick up food. So we're looking to work with different organizations that like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or civic clubs that need to have their
Mhm.
points or doing things to be able to help manage the garden. We have architect engineers that volunteered their time to
Wow.
give us renderings and then create the final version of the drawings to be able to do that. We've been designated land to put the garden there without having putting money up. And so we're working to develop that starting in 2027 through 2028 and provide that to the community. We do also have an annual retreat for widows. I know, men, we're waiting to have more. I don't have enough, but I want to. But we make space for 10 women to be able to come together. And we know something like this is expensive. So we try to have space for 2 women that we accept donations from for those 2 women to be able to be in that space, whether they can afford it or not. So if you're like, oh, I would want to go to the retreat, but I can't, I invite you to support one of those. And these widows show up anonymously. No one knows who they are. They just know that all 10 of them there. But we don't want to have, we have to cover the costs, but we want to
Right.
make sure that we have opportunity to be able to give back to someone else that wouldn't organically. And this year, I'm hosting the retreat with Maya Dion of Widows Do Bounce Back. She's in Maryland. She was a young widow and she has been serving the widowhood community. She has a weekly grief support group that she does every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. I'm
Hmm.
already doing 2 live events, so I try to connect people with her to be able to know that she's available. Another group that I support is Emily Tanner from Brave Widow, that I ask people to connect with them if they're looking for grief coaching or regular grief groups. I don't want to extend past my bandwidth. So to be able to connect with those women to give them other options. And unfortunately, there's enough people hurting in this world to be able to connect with other people and make sure you find someone that resonates with you.
This is all wonderful. And we're going to, what is your website?
2 different websites, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.org for the nonprofit and
Hmm.
TinaFornwald.com for my book, the workshops that I do, and where grief gets stuck, the 5 survival patterns.
Okay, and I'll put those in the liner here. I have one final question before we get to our last list of questions. I am finding when I hear the word grief, and I'm not trying to minimize what anybody's going through. I don't always think about the loss of a loved one. Sometimes I'm thinking about like the society we have now. If I turn on the news and hear about another dead child hanging from a tree or
Girl,
someone
strange fruit. Oh,
snatched off the street and sent somewhere else. I recognize that I'm grieving because I hold grief and trauma in my body. And and I've just recognized that. I have to just turn this off and walk away. Have you noticed that in all of your learning and
yes.
working with people? And what is your advice to us who may not be grieving a loved one, but we're grieving, I guess what we call normalcy.
And what I would recommend, and you're spot on. When I look at grief, I ask you to consider what are you reaching for in life that you can no longer grasp? You may
Mm,
be reaching for your health. You may be reaching for your economic position. You may be reaching for the job you used to have. You may be reaching
right.
for your pet that died. You may be reaching for a friendship that dissolved. You may be
Mm,
reaching for the ability to articulate, but now fear has you now retracted and you no longer feel like you have a voice because you're concerned. You may feel like I don't know if I can say this at work because the perception at work is this, and I don't want to stand out to have a problem. And so when you're reaching for something in life, going back to the brain glitching, going back to I was used to being able to go for a walk. I can't do that because I now relocated to some place that I no longer feel safe walking in. My brain is trying to process what life looks like in this current situation. To one, think about what is different in your life and what you're reaching for a pattern that no longer exists. Because sometimes we can't do anything about a thing unless we identify it and name it.
right.
So I've identified and named it. I lost my job and I've never been able to get a job back with the same level of income that I've had. And now I have debt. Now I have financial pressure. Now I'm concerned about my future. None of
Mm,
this is what I wanted, what I bargained for. And now I'm not sleeping because I've been looking for jobs late at night. My skin is all patchy. I'm not drinking water. I'm not exercising. My body is aching. I'm stressed out when I turn on the news. Yeah, you were
yeah.
grieving.
Mhm.
I once you've named the thing, understand how it's impacting you. What are the things that, like you mentioned, feeling in your body? Am I stressed out? Am I snapping at people? When's the last time I exercised? What are my self-care habits? When's the last time I journaled? When the last time I just listened to a song and danced and just enjoyed the moment and I'm in? Have I lost a sense of appreciation for my own existence and life that I have and free will and ability to continue to choose? Now, what are the things that I go to when life is heavy? Where do I find my strength in life? It can be a combination of things. Get yourself a therapist, get yourself a mental health professional. Don't be out here like I can handle it on your own because you can.
We can't. This is too much.
Right.
This
Get
is
a
too much.
trusted source to talk to.
Hmm.
Get out a journal. Write down your even if you write down the thoughts and throw it away later, but getting
Hmm.
it out of your system and articulating, you will find your shoulders. Go to a chiropractor, get a massage, go for a walk outside. The Grief Recovery Handbook talks about grief out inclusive of death and outside of that because
Right.
grief does impact us in a lot of different ways. So now you've had all those other griefs and then somebody die. Hot garbage.
Woo. Yeah, it's big. So that topic really resonates. It affects us all in some way.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're at the point where I ask all of our guests the same four questions. Yes, we are the Books, Faith, Life podcast, and I honestly believe that the right word at the right time can change your life. That's why I write, that's why I connect with other writers. So, using the letters from the word, I have four questions to ask you. One, when did you know? We're going to talk about your book. When did you know for certain you were going to write that book?
When I was driving home and I heard that word, the Five Widows Club, I was like, this is about to be one.
Hmm.
And I asked my sister, who is a prolific reader, and she
Hmm.
was like, she said, I'm so glad you didn't do a memoir. I was like, shut up, read the book. And she was like, oh, girl, this is some waiting to exhale kind of stuff. And that was the first version, which is, you know what that looks like. It looks like trash. It looks like concept. It looks like, but, and so her daughter, which is my niece, read the book. She said, Auntie, you did that kind of fast. Can you slow down? I project managed a book. I hit all the highlights. And then when I got with Deborah Keevan from Highlander, who is my editor for this, and going, can we get some sensory type of stuff? Like, I didn't think about, like you and I are talking, but to describe the flowers there, the women dancing, the things that you see, but the reader needs to be brought into this process. And
Right.
so it took from that first moment to go, oh, we need to smell the fire burning. Duh.
Exactly. Exactly. Did you find that some of your story came, because I have
Yes.
found that in what I'm writing. Yeah.
So people, yes, yes, people read the book and they're like, this one is you. I was like, yes, I am in all of them, but there
Uh-huh.
is one particular character that's like, that's Screaming Tina.
Um, when you were telling us earlier about when your husband died and your mind said, I got to do this, but I got to do that. Your project manager came up. It reminded me because in your book, when one of the characters' husband dies, she's wondering, should I finish my laundry or something like that. Yeah,
I
that
believe,
that
yes.
duality. Uh-huh.
And so to that point, I've done a podcast with my daughter and with my son because having their voice in this conversation is important because there are young people that lost an amazing dad.
Hmm.
And in the conversation with my daughter, we are in the hospital. We have just spent a good amount of time where her dad's dead body is. When my
Mm.
daughter came into that hospital, they said, your daughter just entered the hospital. I was on the floor, beating, screaming, and losing my mind. And they came in and just to say, your daughter is here. And I got up off the floor because I didn't want, my daughter's never seen that version of her mom. And life is about to hit hard. And
Mhm.
so now she's doing that. And she comes out, and I am making plans about what needs to happen next. We're in Delaware. Mark's body needs to get to Pennsylvania. I'm thinking because project manager mode, being in control, is helping me process and deal with this. I never knew this until literally like maybe 6 years later. I'm having this conversation with the nurse, and they're looking at me, and my daughter comes out. She tells me this during the podcast. She said, I came out and told them, my mom is used to being in control. So whatever she's saying she needs to help her process this, I need you to do it now. They're trying to tell me come back tomorrow. I was like, I am not coming back to the dead hospital tomorrow. I
Right.
need to know his body's moving, where it's going, what's going on. No, we're not coming back and reliving here. I don't
Right.
even want to see you again. So I am doing everything possible to start putting things in place.
Hmm.
My husband's dead body is right here, and I grab my daughter by the face and I say, you are still going into the military. This is not why you're staying home. I did not want my daughter to have this pitiful mom story, and now her life is on hold because she needs to be here with mom. I'm grown. I'm gonna need to figure this out, and I need you to have your life. So the intentionality of wanting to say, life needs to keep moving while I'm crying and screaming
Right.
has been in me from the beginning.
Okay, the next letter, O, organize. How did you organize your life? You said it took 3 years to write this. How did you organize your life? You were retired by then, right?
No, I just retired. I retired from the army, but I just retired from my full-time job in May of 2026. Girl, why you
Okay.
think I gained 30 pounds? I was working, running this nonprofit and typing every
Hmm.
time I got a chance, rewriting, revisiting, trying to understand what writing a book looked like. Chaos, chaos on every, but looking very well put together from the
Hmm.
outside.
Right,
But
right.
staying up way too late. Like normal Tina needs to be in bed by 9 o'clock. That version of
Hmm.
Tina was up burning till midnight and then getting up the next day at 6 a.m. trying to get all the things done. But when I hear people read this book, and when I hear people tell me widows or widowers, or maybe I had one of my cousins, grown man, and he
Hmm.
was like, my mom was a widow. He learned stuff in reading this book that he didn't know about his mom's widow experience, but now
See?
had a glimpse of what it looked like. The 30 pounds are worth it. It will go away. And all the sleepless nights will be worth it because I don't know about you, but when you have a calling and know that
Girl.
this is what you need to do. And I'm going to tell you, I wasn't a fan of what I now call myself to some point a widow whisperer. I was like, well, nobody
Hmm.
trying to know this. But what solidified it for me last year, someone asked me to go with them for their birthday, and we went to Vegas. And it was me, one other lady, the birthday lady, and then her friend. We get there, we have a good time, we're doing all of this. We're back in the Airbnb. I'm in there sleeping. Tap, 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 like at 2 a.m. I'm like, what? Did we have something on the schedule? I don't know what it's been
Hmm.
like. Baby, I need my sleep. And the person comes in who was the birthday person. She said, such and such got a phone call. Her husband died. I was like, what in the ham and cheese are you talking about here? I was like, and she said, can you come over here? And I was like, oh God, you play too much. And so the person who got the phone call and the person who was the friend, they know each other.
Hmm.
To watch someone mentally decompose from being able to make decisions because you're just in shock. And now
Right.
I go into full project manager mode. Call this, do that. I watched this woman like I just met her yesterday. Now she's butt naked trying to figure out how to put on her clothes because she needs to get back to where her husband's body is.
Right.
And God placed me there, alignment. He's like, daughter, this is what I have for you to do. I was like, okay, I'm done playing with you, God. I don't need no more, wet or cold cloth or something, da 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 da.
Right.
But there's
Right.
something amazing for people to trust you in their most weakest moment and know that you will genuinely hold them up and not cause them harm.
Wow.
So now we get this woman to the airport. We get her there. I'm talking to her daughter who I've never met, making sure somebody's picking her up and all these other different things. And now this woman who was the birthday girl, we go back to the Airbnb and we just like, there's some
Wow.
bullshit here. Like we just sitting there mindlessly eating and drinking and doing stuff. And we finally leave and leave the space and kind of do some sightseeing and go like, we just did that.
Just did that. Natural. It just came
Yeah.
natural. Hmm. I guess that's actually the answer to the R question, rear view. Knowing what you know now about this mission and this calling, what would you have told yourself when you were when you were on the floor screaming?
And thank you for that question. I would have told myself, girl, you have no idea what God has planned for you. Now, let me be clear. I'm not a fan of two things. I can't stand making purpose out of your pain. I can't stand that statement. And I cannot stand when people say, this isn't for you, this is for somebody else. Well, it's happening to me. So I need you to understand it is about me. Them two things, in all the bad English, them two things right there, I cannot stand.
I don't like the resilience thing.
But what I do know, everything that I did, I have no regrets about.
Mm.
When I talk to people now and they tell me, and this is me,
Hmm.
the only friend they had was their husband. Oh, okay. This about to be way lonely. I am so glad for my intentionality to be a friend and to make friends and have friends that I've had for years. And
Mm.
we ain't know we have had arguments, we've been back and forth, we've been whatever. But when I tell you when my husband died and those people got on the road in the middle of the night and said, I have to be there, and they meant that thing. They slept in the bed with me that night. One of them had my phone. I mean, total trust. To be able to do that, every decision I made, I can look back and go, I had no idea that's what God ordering your steps look like. It doesn't mean taking away the pain. It doesn't mean taking away the difficulty, but it means in my hurt, in my agony, to look back what now is 10 years later and see how God used all of that to create where I'm at now. I still would not have chosen. I'm like, that's somebody else's calling, not me. Nope, I want my husband breathing. But we don't get that choice. To be where I am now, and something we didn't talk about that I remarried. And I
Hmm.
always thought the idea of remarrying after, because I love my late husband today. I still carry that man's last name. This is not like, oh, I guess she doesn't love him more. Lies, she still do. Like I intentionally wore this because these are our wedding bands reshaped. The outer
Oh,
part is his wedding band and the inner is mine. This is continual love that I wear. The ability to be in this space, to have found love when I thought it just would have been maybe like a friendship, that I am a better wife for my husband Fred now because what I learned being married. I mean, Mark still had a good wife, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, you improve, you do better. Like like the way that man got some dirty clothes on the floor and I just walk over it. Now, Mark, I'm like, can you put your clothes in the laundry bag? He's like, I don't even know that's over there. I'm like, I don't
right.
care. Like that man cook, he do stuff like, look, walk over it. I don't care because I know one day he or I will stop breathing. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to have my last conversation about some dirty clothes on the floor. He washed his own clothes. I don't.
Girl.
So the ability to know how precious life is. Like if I get in an argument with somebody, okay, I guess we ain't talking no more. I am not gonna
Mhm.
be running you down. Like I used to be the person like, can we talk about what happened? Bye.
No.
I wish you well and Godspeed. Guess we at an impasse.
Yeah, no hard feelings. We're just not going to do that.
Right. And I don't have the energy, like, I don't have the energy to be like, okay, I said what I said. I will eat a crow sandwich. I will apologize. I will own my stuff. But, you know, life has been amazing. I
Hmm.
thought breast cancer was going to be the cross I had to bear, and I was okay with that. That whole
We haven't
man,
even mentioned that. Your husband helped you through that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was going to be the difficulty. I never comprehended how one person no longer existing would change every part of the landscape of my life. And if I had to do it all over, I would have still chose him. I would have still married him. If I couldn't change that last day, I still would have. Man sent a quartet to my job to sing to me one day for Valentine's Day. And that man, I'm like, my husband, when he told me and gave me the rules, I was like, oh, he coming up with some new stuff. Okay. Because we're all going to leave this world. But I cherish life in a way that I didn't before. But I am so grateful that I got to be Mark Fornwald's wife.
The last word is D for delete. Is there anything, and we've touched on that already, that this new Dr. Tina has learned to delete from her life that it don't even matter after coming through what you've come through?
I don't know if this answers the question, but my no game is strong. Like me to be able to delete what I say I don't want to do and not be bothered, and for you to care and be all in a huff, okay.
I
Like,
tell my friends will tell you I have a no ministry. I've got a no ministry. Yeah, you've got to.
And it's like, I remember somebody asked, oh, you could be good at that, but that's not what I want to do. No, I don't want
Yeah.
to do that. And they're
Hmm.
looking at me and they're looking for an explanation. There was a period after that. No, I may choose to give
Hmm.
you more, but no is a complete response. And it started with the breast cancer and it came full-fledged with my husband dying. Like the way that I don't care if it's not what I want to do and what I don't feel God pressing me to do and whatever, I'd be like, I dare you to ask me why.
It just appeared to me that your alignment with God must be like this now because you heeded his voice. Not that you're perfect, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
You were aligned with him and you heard him clearly say, go to your husband, and you went. You didn't talk your
yeah.
way out of it. You didn't question whether it was God or
Oh
not.
no, I did. I was questioning because I didn't want to drive. I was like, I thought God was saying, like, go meet Mark in Virginia. I'm like, I don't want to drive all the way to Virginia. Like, I'm gonna see him for Easter. That was my first thought. Then I heard God again. I was like, oh, we okay, sir, you want to meet halfway? So my first response was like, what do we want to do? Then after the second time, I was like, okay. And people may say, and sometimes I'm apprehensive. Like people ask me how we got there. I was like, this is the truth. But it's not some woo-woo kind of thing like you floating in the air and like it's to me when you're spending time reading God's word, spending time in God's presence. It's like if you got a girlfriend, you're
Mhm.
hearing their voice because you know their pattern and know who they are. And I was just telling my girlfriend that left. So I had this knee replacement on June 30th. I am allergic to acetaminophen, which is in Tylenol. I'm allergic to aspirin. I'm allergic to over-counter pain medication. Opioids is the thing for your girl.
Mhm.
I have been in la la land like ain't nobody's business, but what I ain't felt is no pain. But now
Mhm.
I'm doing the physical therapy, I'm doing all the different stuff. And I was telling her, I said, I have never battled with the level of sliding into depression or feeling like I had this irrational thought that I was going to be stuck feeling like in this unrecovery mode. I had a lot of thoughts that I have never struggled with. And I was like, where is all this coming from? I have not been having my regular go to bed time and get up and spend time in God's presence. There is something about covering our mind and clothing it in the word of God or being in God's presence because these negative thoughts are always trying to get in or what that looks like and I was like I need to go to bed so I can get myself up and spend time with God because I cannot serve people out of my own strength. I
Mm.
cannot do the thing that because if you do start operating that way, pride will come in. And now
Yeah.
you think it's something you've done versus when I spend time with God in the morning and whether it's just playing music, speaking in tongues, or what that looks like, but submitting my day to God and the direction that God is going to give me is
Mhm.
something that I know I've now been missing. And I was like, last 3 nights, I'm like, I got my CPAP on,
And
we
you
going
can
to
feel the
sleep.
effects of it, right?
Yes.
Girl. Dr. Tina, this has just been wonderful, more wonderful than I had even imagined. I want to thank you so much for dropping by. And I'm going to put both of your websites in the liner notes and so that folks can go and check out your books, check out your resources, contact you if they feel the need to. And I just want to thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Pamela.
Okay, thank you everyone for dropping by Books, Faith, Life, and we will see you next time where we're chatting with another author about their wonderful books of healing and growth. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.